Uh, hey, Paige. So we're live. Get this kind of one right out of the bat. So, what's really interesting about Paige as an interviewee, Paige graduated from Ranken, um, which is no different than anyone else. But what's unique about Paige is she is my sister. And, Paige went through the program some years ago. And
Hmm.
and so that just made a really interesting family dynamic at Thanksgiving, which is like, you know, ultimately Rankin is trying to prepare all students for work, and so like I had this, and I've seen this industry, and I've seen it grow, and I've seen all these students get jobs, but I was just made a little bit more pressure. Like, here's your sister, and I'm just like imagining like a scenario where it doesn't work out well, and like we're all sitting around Thanksgiving dinner, and that was terrifying for me. Like, what if this doesn't work out for my sister? So, off the top, I'm so happy that it did. Like, I believe in this program. Obviously, I work here. I've worked here. This is my life's work. So I believe in this program, but really, this kind of proves to me that, like, I believe in it enough to let you come here. Like, if I didn't believe it, if I was kind of like, look, I work here, but it's a crappy school, kind of stay away. No, like, you're my sister, Like, I believe in this. I need it to work for you. I'm so glad it worked, And so here we are
Yeah,
today to ask you some questions. So, anyways, I'm glad it worked out. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Paige, how would you introduce yourself? I'll shut up.
Yeah, so I graduated in 2015, I believe. My current title is a business analyst, but coming out of Rankin, I mostly just went straight into quality assurance. So I started out as an intern as a sort of quality assurance tester, and then moved up the ranks very quickly to a QA lead, doing some pretty technical testing. I became sort of a subject matter expert where I worked. I worked in the financial sector, and now I work in utilities. So yeah, it's a little bit different because I'm not doing straight development work. I've sort of meandered into a whole other sort of track that I didn't expect at first, but I've really come to enjoy it.
Nice. Um, so you're a business analyst, and who do you work for?
I work for Ameren, so the folks that keep your lights on,
Nice, nice.
hopefully, or don't. So yeah, for those that don't know, Ameren's a utility company services Missouri and Illinois. They work with electric, gas, nuclear, a lot of different things there. So they're regulated by a lot of state and federal entities. So quality assurance is very important. The stuff I work on is the software that the field techs use. So they use tablets when they're doing their work out in the field. If a power line goes down, they can go out there with their tablet and be like, yep, that transformer is on fire. And they'll, enter that into the system, and that's all captured for regulatory purposes. So I kind of work on that internal software that the field techs use.
Nice. And so you're a business analyst working on internal software for Ameren. And like what does that really mean? Like you said you're not really as much writing the code anymore.
I,
Yeah.
So yeah, so they hired me because previously I was sort of a technical QA person. I did a lot of automated testing, writing those automated test scripts. I tested some pretty weird stuff, which I'll get to later, that just required a lot of hands-on, you know, uh, really specific sort of things. But yeah, now it's much more broader. It's much more soft skill based. Pretty much, I pretty much describe my job as I'm almost like a translator. I just facilitate things. I figure out what the guys in the field need. And then I figure out how to translate that to the development team. So our developers writing the code, they don't know how electrical lines work or what those forms need to look like or what to do when a gas pipe leaks. So I kind of gather all that information, learn about how the field guys do their job, and then I bring that back to the development team and help them design what the business needs, essentially, what the end user requests. So I do a lot of facilitation between all the teams within Ameren to make sure that everyone knows what's going on, pretty much.
Yeah, that's really cool because that's how your career evolved.
Right.
And what a critical role it is.
Right. Yeah. Being able to know both sides and kind of speak both languages and kind of grease the rails between the two has been incredibly helpful because, you know, I mean, a lot of times the end user will get frustrated. Well, why don't they do it this way? They don't know what we need. You know, they're not listening to us. And then sometimes you bring back to the development team and they're like, we can't do that. These people are crazy, you know. And a lot of times they'll end up at odds with each other and just frustrated. So being that person to kind of, you know, keep everyone happy is kind of nice. But cool. It's a lot of learning too, because I have to learn how the applications work, what is and isn't possible. And then I also have to learn like what a gas tech or a lineman does on a daily basis, like down to how they fill out all their paperwork with certain voltage readings and all that nitty gritty. So it's just a lot of jumping in and learning everything.
So another way of putting that is that understanding the development process and how to code is a prerequisite for your job.
I would say so. Yeah, absolutely. And there's still some technical things that I do. Like I know my title is a business analyst, but it's kind of because they don't have a title for what I do. They just needed a place to put me. So I wear kind of a QA hat, like a quality assurance or like an auditor type hat. But then I also do a lot of the sort of liaison stuff that a business analyst would do, like record requirements and create documentation and that sort of stuff. So on the quality assurance side, I'm also leading an automation team to help automate end-to-end test scripts for our business people. So I can kind of describe what that is a little bit, but essentially, you know, business comes to us and says, hey, you know, we need this particular change. We need to add this field to a form or something like that. And just as an example. And we say, okay, I think we can do that. I take that back to the development team, say, hey, they want this new field. It needs to accept this type of information. They want it here, but not here, and all those details. The development team says, okay, we can do that. They code it. They eventually give it back to business for user acceptance testing. So business looks at it and pokes around and makes sure it does what they want, and then they give the thumbs up. If you times that by like 1,000 changes constantly rolling through, your business people are constantly testing stuff and constantly coming up with new stuff. And so a lot of that testing we're trying to automate to where you can just run a script, and that script pretends that it's the business person, goes through, fills out the form, tries all these different scenarios, ensures that it does what it's supposed to under sort of the happy path conditions, or, you know, throws an error message when it's supposed to, or stops a user from doing something or entering certain types of information. It's sort of like brute forces through all these different scenarios.
Yeah.
So developing all those test cases and identifying what is needed there, down to the nitty-gritty specifics of what can be entered and what can't be. We're trying to knock all that out. So then we have a trustworthy suite of these automated test cases. So that's another slice of what I do.
Well, that's a great explanation of how your coding skills can still be applied in your current position. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, and you know, unit testing is something that we cover here at Ranken, but as you know, we don't do deep dives. But
right.
Obviously there's full jobs in it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, lots of jobs in that. So that's cool. That's cool to see how that's applied. So I'm guessing you're working from home.
I am. I'm very much working from home. They actually sold the office building that I worked in. And Ameren is very safety conscious. So as soon as COVID kind of became a thing, they were like, hey, we're going to test out if everyone can work from home. Everyone took their laptops home, and then they were like, all right, it worked. Stay there.
Nice.
And that was the last day we were ever in the office. So, yeah, they did sell our office building. We're now permanently work from home. So that has been pretty nice. Occasionally I venture out and I'll visit an operating center, or, go follow a lineman around or whatever to kind of learn how field people do their jobs, so that I can sort of speak on their behalf on occasion and know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But that's about it. Otherwise, I'm always here.
That's cool. Yeah, and that's kind of been the case with all these alumni interviews. Everyone's working from home, so it's man, that's really, COVID has really changed some things, and we're seeing that. So, what now? You say you kind of do the scripts, for testing. And so, what language are you writing there, or what languages? Let me ask you this: what languages have you used on the job?
Yeah. So the first ones that sort of come to mind are, we use JavaScript we use a program called Test Complete for automated testing, but there's a lot of different. You can do automated testing in a ton of different ways, but we use a big program called Test Complete that just uses JavaScript, but it also has its own proprietary language. But yeah, I think most automation guys stick to the JavaScript though.
Okay.
Yeah, other than that, I personally these days on my sort of day-to-day do a lot of like Jira query language. Knowing any kind of query language has been completely invaluable because I'm also the reporting person, so I'm constantly pulling reports from anything and everything I can possibly pull a report from, because all of the higher ups, like to see what's going on and what's moving and make sure work is being done or tests are being ran, or, if someone runs a test and it fails, they log a defect. And so tracking all those defect or bug reports is a big thing. To kind of get the metrics for our quality. So I do a lot of that. So Excel formulas and Jira query language have been very important for me. But in the past, when I was in the financial sector and doing a little bit more technical stuff, I was using SOAP UI for testing API calls, endpoint to endpoint. So essentially making sure that if endpoint A sends information, that our system will pick that up and process it correctly. I've done a decent amount of testing around that, and also like if a message is sent from endpoint A to endpoint B, we get that message and we need to convert it to some other format that those things are being converted properly. Done that style of testing. And then I also did some interesting work using like Linux Bash command line, which is really unforgiving. It was probably some of the hardest testing I've ever done in my life, was working in that command line. But cool. It was very fun. Yeah, it was very fun.
You mentioned at one point, weren't you teaching Java to some of your coworkers?
I was, yeah. I forget what that was even for, to be honest. It was so long ago, but yeah, I believe a lot of our applications at that company that I was working for, which got trade and TD Ameritrade, a lot of their front-end products that customers would use to check their stock trades or their account balances, that sort of stuff, was all coded in Java. And so a lot of the QA people actually wanted to learn Java to better understand how the inner workings of those programs worked. So I started turning around, and for a while I was doing whiteboard follow along classes on the basics of Java, which is pretty funny because I'm not very good at Java, as we all know.
Well, you must have been good enough to teach it to your coworkers.
Yeah,
That's
they
cool.
did okay. They did okay.
So here's a question that that I think a lot of people can relate to. So your passion has always been drawing.
Yes.
But you didn't pursue an art degree, or did you?
I didn't. No, I purposely didn't.
Yeah.
Because I like money too much.
So expand that. What was your? I mean, again, your passion is art.
Yeah.
Why did you pursue an IT degree?
Actually, I think the two can go hand in hand in really interesting ways. Especially if you're interested, and I don't even have a lot of experience here, but I feel like it's something I've been looking at more and more. But there are a lot of folks out there that want to make video games or want to make like interactive art-based novels, or like there's just a lot of digital art and graphic design and visual stuff that goes hand in hand with like a lot of coding endeavors, and like what I would call creative coding endeavors. So I felt like I already had art down. I needed to learn coding.
Yeah.
And so I feel really fortunate because if I ever decided to take that path, I see a lot of developers, for instance, who like want to make their own games or want to do game jams or want to do, those more creative pursuits that aren't like strictly sort of corporate America. But they say like, I need an artist, or I don't know how to make this look pretty. I just know how to code it, and that sort of thing. So I kind of feel like I have the best of both worlds a little bit, to where if I wanted to turn into that a little bit more, I definitely could.
That's cool.
And so, yeah, I'm starting to get more into 3D printing and 3D sculpting and painting and texture mapping and all that kind of stuff, which is fun.
The first answer that you gave was because I like money, which to me just says you didn't want to be a hungry artist. I guess the stereotype is there's a lot of hungry artists out there, and you can make it big, but it's also pretty challenging.
It's it is really challenging, and I do have a little side hustle where I design stickers and sell stickers or make stationery and that kind of stuff. And that's all digital art, and that's been sort of a fun exercise for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of social media hustling. You can make it happen, but it's really hard work.
Yeah.
Not stable.
Cool. Yeah. So thanks for sharing that. So what's a day in your life like? So for your job, what's it like? When do you start? When do you stop? What's in between?
Yeah, so I usually log on at like 8 a.m. and sort of I use like 8 a.m. to sort of 9 a.m. to just like get all my orders and like affairs in order, I guess I could say, and sort of get my to-do list down for the day or follow up on notes from the previous day. And then, we have a daily Scrum meeting, it's called, where all of the developers on my team, I'm on the gas operations team, so we work for the gas technicians out in the field who are testing pipes and checking meters or attending to gas leaks, that sort of stuff. We are kind of the overseers of the software that they use. So we have a big daily Scrum call, it's called, and we all get online, developers, myself, the QA person, our business guys who were previously field workers and now work in IT. They sort of consult for us on what's needed, and they're kind of a liaison also. I'm sort of their right-hand person. Managers, whoever, all get on this call and we all talk about what we're working on that day, essentially. What needs to be done, what problems have come up. If we're having an upcoming software release, we'll make sure we have all of our documentation and release notes in order. We'll finalize our list of what we want to go out. If we're working on a release, we start checking off our to-do list of, okay, these 3 changes are done, and person A is going to keep working on this one that's in progress. It's essentially a huge team check-in to make sure that we're all working towards a common goal in the same way. We all know what's going on, that sort of thing. And then sort of throughout the day, right now, I am just kind of running around like a crazy person. I don't know how else to say it. We have multiple teams. Like we have the electric team, and they do all the electric sort of power line people's stuff. We have, just like multiple projects going on in tandem with each other, and they're all putting out code changes. And so if you think about like this end product that is live in production that end users are using to do their jobs, like, it's got to work, right? You can't have a bunch of people that take care of the power lines, like, not be able to record any of their work that they're doing. So as we push out these changes, we need to make sure that we're scheduling them to where it won't disturb their work. We're not going to cause the system to crash. We're not going to break anything, that sort of thing. So all of these teams in this sort of space all have to work together to collaborate to make sure we're not breaking each other's code, since we're all working kind of on the same software.
Yeah.
But making sure that we're still making improvements to our end users. So there's a lot of collaboration going on in tandem with a lot of, testing the product, by itself alongside other people's changes, and then making sure, even though it's technically correct and the code doesn't break other code, making sure it's what the business wants and fulfills their needs, and going through all that process. I help facilitate a lot of that and collaborate with the other teams at Ameren.
Sounds like a whole lot of responsibility juggling.
It is a lot of juggling.
We got all these, teams and all these stakeholders and all the, ultimately they're all trying to make all these changes and not break anything and coordinating it all together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quite a complex system you got.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what your day is. It's literally just spending all day doing all these random tasks.
Yeah, pretty much.
To make everyone happy.
Right. And then on top of that, there's also this, this internal sort of audit that goes on where, like I said earlier, we are state and federally regulated. So with our software, they want to make sure that we're not being reckless, essentially, with these changes. So they have their own standards that we must meet. And so I'm the person that has to go out and make sure everyone's being compliant to those standards. There aren't conflicts of interest happening. And then, providing the paperwork and the proof to say, hey, we did our due diligence to ensure that, we're working in a safe manner, compliant to those things too. So there's a lot of wrist slapping I do where I'm, hey, you can't move that ticket. You can't just throw this change out there. You can't sneak this into a release. It wasn't tested. So I'm constantly, when I'm not juggling the other 50 things, I'm constantly combing through those things to make sure that everyone knows what the process is. They're adhering to the process. Everyone is being diligent, that sort of thing.
Yeah, nice.
Too.
So how did you get your first job? You mentioned that your first employer was Scottrade, TD Ameritrade. Yeah. So how'd you get that job? I'm pretty sure there was a job posting for it at Ranken, and I saw it, and it said, a QA intern. I said, QA, that sounds kind of interesting. And I know I was a little bit intimidated by a straight coding job, and I kind of I don't know, it just seemed interesting to me. It seemed like a flexible sort of interesting position that wasn't just head down, write code. It seemed like something that would lead to more options, which it absolutely did. Nice.
But yeah, I saw a posting for it, thought, that sounds interesting. I could probably do that. And it, the price was nice. So I took it, and it was hands down the best career choice I've made. It had absolutely paved my path up to this point. They brought me on, and that company had the most top tier, rock solid QA department I've ever seen. Their process was perfection. They set the best learning example for me to learn from. And the people that I worked with there and that mentored me or that I mentored, we're all still friends. That company got bought out by TD Ameritrade, so we all sort of disseminated throughout St. Louis. But I actually still work with 5 coworkers from Scottrade at Ameren, and we're actually helping to build Ameren's QA in our department. So we're building a lot of brand new process and implementing all this knowledge that we brought from that company, because Ameren is just now sort of learning that stuff.
It's kind of like St. Louis is a big city but small at the same time, right? So
Yeah.
like the tech industry is smaller than you might think, because like you
Yeah.
said, you went from company to company and yet it's still five of the same people.
Yeah, and actually, I was brought into Ameren because one of my mentors from Scott Trade was hired at Ameren, and they had almost no process, and she was very stressed about it. And they said, "Hey, we appreciate what you've contributed here. You know QA inside and out. You know how to implement process and get the software development lifecycle established and clean. We need two of you. Who's your pick?" And she said me. So she pulled me over into Ameren.
Awesome.
And now we work together still. So.
Very cool. Very cool. You kind of said I believe you said the price was nice. And
Yeah.
so, this is going to be public facing, so clearly not asking you what you make or anything like that, but, kind of what tips would you give about the industry when it comes to salary, and what should they expect, and what do you see out there?
Yeah. So I'm not sure, what the PR way of phrasing this would be. But I will say, don't be afraid to ask for a raise, essentially. Don't be afraid to ask for a promotion as your skills increase. When I first started, I was making, I'll just give ranges like 30K to 50K a year. And now that's almost doubled. I was a contractor for a while, and that brought my salary up quite a bit. I would just say don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to put a little bit of pressure on people. Especially if you've worked at a few companies where you've really tailored your resume to be pretty powerful,
Yeah.
which is a little bit what I did. I distinctly aimed for teams to work for that would teach me things that I knew would look really great on a resume. So the choices that I made in my day-to-day work and who I wanted to work with and what I wanted to reach for, I did with my resume in mind to make my resume look very good so that I would have more bargaining power. And that's been very effective. And if you're at a place that doesn't challenge you or doesn't make your resume look good, then don't be afraid to move on. Always be improving, or just always make sure you're being productive. Sometimes it's easy to get complacent and sit at
like
a
your
company.
skills are plateauing and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So you really have to sometimes say, hey, do you have anything more for me here? Or I'm going to go, because the industry will move pretty fast sometimes. Yeah. And so staying on top of it is important.
Cool. And so thank you for that. What other, what has helped you to have a successful career? Like, what have you done? You say these couple of attributes, these things that I've done have really helped me along the way.
Yeah, definitely the resume building is one.
Did you have a resume coming into Ranken? Like, did you have one ready to go, or did you build one?
No, I didn't have one coming into Ranken at all. I built one while at Ranken, and then throughout my time in the IT industry.
And then did you? You worked at Scott Trade. Were you employed before graduation? After? Do you remember how that timeline worked?
I was employed before graduation, so I was brought on as an intern, and their internship program was really nice. They sort of rotated me around a lot of different teams, and I got to play a lot of different roles there. So I was an intern for them in 2014.
Okay.
For 6 months, and then I believe I graduated in 2015.
Yep.
And then they hired me on full time, and I was sort of like a baby QA test engineer for a while. And then I got promoted to a QA lead, and then they put me on a team that was pretty specialized.
So the resume, and I'm kind of going back to this resume, but the resume that you wrote at Ranken obviously worked enough to get your job in the door. Did you spend a lot of time working on the resume? Talk about how did you build that?
So I mostly covered. So generally, when I make a resume personally, I'll put my technical skills, like my hard skills first, almost like a grocery list. And I will order it based on what I think that company wants the most, what will be appealing to them the most. So I try to tailor it to the company. Like if I know I'm applying for a position, just giving random examples as a Java developer, I would put, hey, I have these hard Java skills. This is what I worked on up here. And then, after that, I might go into here's my work history of where I've worked previously, and here's my education.
Got it.
Or in the case of coming straight out of Ranken, I put here's my hard technical skills and what I know, and then here's my education, and go into more detail there.
Yeah, cool.
But
because I just know a lot of students are in that space where they need to build their resume out and what should it look like, and so that's good. And then so resume and those kinds of skills to get your foot in the door. But then I cut you off about what have you done throughout your career to have a successful.
Yeah. So I would say the biggest thing I always tell people is under promise and over deliver. I know that probably sounds bad, but I work with a lot of folks that are sort of what I would call yes men. They just say yes to everything because they want to please the business, please the higher ups, et cetera, et cetera. But that works well in the short term, but in the long term, you'll be viewed as much more reliable and much more honest if you sort of set your boundaries, say, yes, this is what I can get done, this is what I can't, or I can shift priorities, work on this rather than this, but, be upfront about the cost of that, because a lot of times in development, people will want everything all at once, and they're like, oh, this is a lot of nice to haves. Can you just give it all to me? And it's like there's only 40 hours in the week, maybe 50. It's just being very honest and upfront and transparent with your team and who you're working with about what you can and can't get done. And then sprinkling on the nice to haves at the end, like that'll get you pretty far.
Do you know when I'm listening to you, you know what it really reminds me of? And I haven't watched a lot of these shows, but like House Hunters on it's like you get this couple and they've got this money and they've got this laundry list that's this long. Of like, I want everything in the kitchen sink too, and then the realtor has to step in and say, well, I understand, but you got to be like realistic. What are the must-haves? What are the nice-to-haves?
Yeah.
And so you're the realtor of like, okay, like let's be realistic here, not just say yes to everything.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I've been places where their top priority lists had a top priority list that had a top priority list. I'm like, all of these things can't be top priority. We got to like back it off a little bit.
Doesn't work that way.
So, yeah, all that communication stuff is important. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I mean, those are all the questions that are kind of preloaded here. Students' questions. Again, we're at a kind of a lengthy. I've dived in deeper with my sister than I do with most graduates, so I don't know that have too many, which is okay, which is fine. Well, thanks for taking some time, Paige. It's been awesome. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. All right. Hey, take care. Good seeing you.
Yep.
All righty. Later.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.